guys. Alright, so I've decided to bring back my book reviews, and I'm hoping, like, the goal is to do them every week. Obviously that's going to be pending like me having time to like read the book, but I can read books like super fast. So I also wanted to like have a coffee moment as well. I gotta take a sip because it's just too good. And honestly, kind of how this happened was I decided to change my posting schedule. I just wasn't really liking the setup. It was originally like Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays. So posting 4 days a week. And I didn't like the setup of that. So I think it will be easier for me to do Monday through Friday, but that means pulling in an additional video. And right now I'm trying to not scale back in videos, but I'm trying to, you know, balance my work life with also just like having a life. But anyways, so I decided that a really good way to incorporate that 5th video without feeling like I'm adding more work for myself, even though like technically I am, because that's a 5th video to edit and do all that, but it's still going to be an easy concept for me because it's just like one thing. So anyways, the goal is to essentially do a book review every Friday. I know that's not always going to happen. I'm sure I'll miss some Fridays, and then essentially you'll just get my normal vlogs Monday through Thursday. But regardless, if I post on a Friday, it's only going to be a book review. Not to confuse anybody before we do kind of dive into this, but I feel like this is the intro to this whole new setup. So first of all, you know, if you're here and you want to watch my vlogs but book reviews aren't your thing, that's why I've decided to like just put it in its own video on its own day. So book review Fridays are back. And so yeah, if that's not your thing, don't worry, you're still gonna get, you know, my 4 vlogs a week. It's just gonna be Monday through Thursday, so they're just gonna be back to back. And then Saturday and Sunday, I won't be posting any videos. So there's that. Now, not to confuse anybody, but my vlogs are still very behind. Right now it's September, what's today? I don't know, September 18th. So I'm jumping ahead to do this book review so that I can basically go ahead and start my new vlogging schedule. But it should actually kind of catch us up in a way, if that makes sense. But basically what I'm saying is, you'll probably see a vlog maybe after this. I'm not sure where it's gonna fall, but I'm gonna be talking about how I'm talking about book reviews and that I picked this book, and thus giving you guys time to pick this book and read it and then watch the, you know, and then watch the book review with me. But it's gonna seem a little bit out of order for this particular book, if that makes sense. So essentially I haven't given anybody the heads up or the warning that this is gonna be the book that's gonna be reviewed for today. But I'm gonna do it anyways. And if you want to pick up this book, I will link it down below for you guys. You can go read it, and then you can always come back to this book review, you know, or you can watch it now, go get it, and then still come back and kind of like see how it matches up to, like, you know, your experience with reading this. So that's what we're gonna do. Of course, it's gotta be books and coffee. So make yourself some coffee, some tea, or like your favorite soda, your favorite wine, like whatever it is. Whatever it is. Now the plan is, moving forward, again, I'm closing up this intro, I want to make these videos as comfy as possible. Like, I just want it to be the ultimate woosah chill experience. This background really isn't doing it that much, but this is what we're gonna do today. But I just want you to know that moving forward, I want everything to just feel so cozy for you guys. But so there's that. We're changing the vlogging schedule. It's gonna be Monday through Thursday. Fridays are gonna be book reviews only, and then no posting Saturday and Sunday. And that's just on this channel. This is no direct effect to my other channel, my main channel, CraftyGirl. I will link this book down below for you guys if you want to pick it up. Joanna Lindsey is my favorite author, so if you're just new to watching me or new to romance novels, I personally love Joanna Lindsey and her style of writing. I have a bunch of different authors actually in my bookshelves behind me. I need to give them a chance, but so far the ones I have picked up and kind of like tried to read, I couldn't read. They just don't have the same writing style as Joanna Lindsey. I just love her characters, their personality. I mean, I laugh so hard sometimes at like what she writes, and Julie Garwood too. So, but today we're gonna do Joanna Lindsey, and yeah, When Love Awaits. So this book is set in England, 1176. I love historical romance. I love anything from back in the day. I just love it. In a lot of ways, like, even though I'm single and I'm 40, that shouldn't be funny, but it's like, what? Do you laugh? Do you cry? I don't know. But I'm really a traditional woman at heart. Like, that's just me. Like, I know we're in different times and like the whole equality. I do think that if I were to like time travel back into those days, I would probably have a problem with a lot of things. You know, I mean, obviously Joanna Lindsey writes it in a more modern way because realistically some of the things the women do in these novels like probably could never be done back in the day. But if I could live like in her world, you know what I mean? Like, oh, for sure, I'd buy a one-way ticket and that I'd be there. That's where you'd find me. So yeah, that's just a little tidbit about me. I do really like that. So, and I'm very much, even though you guys have not seen me date, I just stopped dating a long time ago. That's like a whole story in itself, but I've already talked about it. And basically the reason why I'm not dating now is just because I really like my life the way that it is. I like how, you know, I just like it. And eventually I will date, but basically the point is I really like, my perfect man is very masculine, like, and I don't mean like muscles, I just mean a masculine, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, anyways, so that's why I really love these books, because I feel like the men back in the day, they were just a different breed, you know, y'all know what I'm saying. In an era like that, ranking existed. So she does write to actual like time and clothing, like she does write to like the actual historical of our world. Obviously, you know, she just changes the characters' behaviors. Like that probably would never happen. I don't really know. But anyways, so Lady Leone, she is a high rank. I think like her father is like an earl or something like that. It basically says, once Lady Leone cursed the Black Wolf, handsome Rolf de Ambert, the mercenary lord of Kempston, for his bloody deeds and cruelty to the local peasants, and now she must marry the magnificent blackguard to bring peace to the land. Young, innocent, possessing a rare and exquisite beauty, Leone would be a prize for any man, yet Rolf seeks the match solely for revenge. But her sensuous kiss ignites within him the fiery need to claim her and an irresistible desire to unite their warring hearts in a glorious love. I don't know why like I keep holding the book up. I've noticed I've done that in my past book reviews. Alright, so now I'm gonna just kind of break down what this story was about, and then I'm gonna just like go through everything that I loved, and I'll essentially like rank this book as well. So Lady Leone is written as a very beautiful character. She has, in my mind, she has like white silvery hair and basically a pair of matching eyes, although I do forget like what her eyes were described as. And she is very stunning. Basically her dad, when her mom died, her father like went off the deep end and basically sent her away, said he didn't want to look at her, so he sends her to another one of his keeps, which is essentially like another castle, if you will. Like he has a bunch of land and other places, and he sends her away to this other one. And actually it might have been her mom. Her mom's side, I think, comes from like an earl, even though her father's highly ranked as well. But she got, when her mother passed away, Leonie got all of the holdings from her mother. It's just part of like the way that her and her husband decided like where the mother's stuff would go when she passed. So he sends her off, and so she's been living there since she was like, you know, I don't know, 8 years old up until she's like 19 basically. And she is loving her life essentially. She loves that she's on her own. She thought that she wanted to marry, but then she kind of like, okay, I'm never gonna get married. And she's into the healing arts, which she got from her mother. So that's a very big key thing. That's part of Leonie's personality, is that she is a healer. So, you know, the way Joanna Lindsay kind of describes like all of these natural remedies, like certain roots and certain herbs that she'll like mix to heal. And so she's a healer, and she loves spending time in her garden because like that's where she grows, you know, all her stuff. Well, basically the keep that she's staying at, there's her servants and her people essentially are kind of warring with the border of another keep that doesn't belong to her. And so I mean, honestly, like this part's kind of confusing, but essentially it's what draws Rolf, the male character, to her, because they think they're like each trying to come at each other because someone's like lighting someone's hut on fire, that kind of thing. And they think that they're kind of like trying to do that to each other. And he realizes, or he learns, that it's a woman that's like the head of this keep. And he decides to marry her. And apparently she flat out refuses. But she's not the one who refuses it, I don't believe. It was her stepmother, because her father ends up remarrying to this crazy, crazy lady. And the plot twist on that, it will make you so sad. That's the other thing I love about Joanna Lindsay. Like, she just gives you multiple stories within a story, and I love that. She always, like, it's so easy to read these books, basically. So anyways, the stepmother refuses the whole union, because what the stepmother's been doing while the dad's been drunk and like all this stuff, he still can't get over like the loss of his wife essentially. And the stepmom has been like raiding all of her keeps, all the ones that Leonie inherited from her mother. So like when they go out and, you know, they make food and they grain and all that stuff and they bring it to that keep, you know, the stepmom would come and like raid it and take it all the hard work that each of those keeps had done. So Leonie starts learning to like hide a bunch of the stuff so that she can't steal all of it and like leave them basically with nothing. So she learns that at an early age. She didn't want for Leonie to marry because then she would lose out on all the stealing that she's doing. So then, but Rolf gets so angry about this that he goes to the king, who happens to be his good friend, and he's like highly favored. And Rolf is like very like high ranked, or he made something of himself essentially. He was like the second born son of his father, so he didn't inherit everything, and he kind of was like outcasted. And his brother was very greedy, so he even wanted what Rolf had, so he took it. So Rolf just like washed his hands basically of his family and went out and became a mercenary. And that's how he made a bunch of his money. And he made his money in knighthood, you know, like the whole jousting, which was true. A lot of knights back in the day would make their money like going to these events and like, you know, so that's what he had done. And he was just so rich, like incredibly rich essentially. So now he's also into warring. Like he'll go and try to take over keeps, you know, and make them his. So he's never been a man that's like settled down. And so he's agitated by what his neighbor, his neighbor's doing to his keep, and he decides, let me marry her, and then like all this will stop, because he's just too busy. He's too busy trying to take over all of these other things, and he doesn't want all this drama, essentially. So when he gets turned down, he gets mad. And then he kind of remembers who she is. He remembered her from when she was really young, and she at the time wasn't as beautiful as she was described. She had a lot of rashes, which came in the healing arts and all of that. So that's what he remembered her as. And so he's like, ugh, I'm gonna take this wife. I'm not really gonna like her. But I'm gonna do it anyway, because it was a business deal in his mind. And so he goes to the king and he's like, make her marry me, basically. And the king's like, done. You know, so the king sends the official, she's marrying him. That's the end of the story. And so the stepmom, I think her name is Judith, Lady Judith or Judy, I don't remember. She panics, but of course she's like, okay, I gotta do what I gotta do. And she goes to Leone and basically tells her, all right, you got to marry this guy. And Leone doesn't like him. At this point, Leone has heard so many bad things. He's labeled the Black Wolf, and he has this reputation that's basically frightened her, and she like doesn't want to deal with him or be anywhere near him. And so she's just like, she's heard about his temper, you know, she's like, no, this match will not do, essentially. And basically, Lady Judith gets her right-hand man, this guy, to beat her, and almost to death he beats her. I mean, he like closed fist beats Leone into submission, basically into marrying Rolf D'Ambert. I don't know how you say the D'Ambert, whatever. On her wedding day, she veils herself because she doesn't want anyone to know that she's like been beaten. I mean, she is literally like black, swollen, all those things. So she veils herself and basically sends the excuse that like her rashes came back, and you know, and so Rolf is like, okay, like her rashes came back, whatever. And basically this whole story, honestly, is about miscommunication. So in a way, this isn't one of my top favorite books. I'm not, and this is just me personally, like, I know that in the end, the characters end up together, but really the journey in between obviously is like what makes it either good or bad. And for me, I hate it when it's just simple miscommunication. You know, he thinks one thing that's not what she's thinking, and you know, she thinks one thing that he's not thinking. And it's like, it could just so easily be resolved. So it's one of those. The night of their wedding, you know, the very traditional, this was how it was actually done back in the day. The women would bring the bride in, get her ready, get her in her gown, get the bed ready kind of thing. And then the men would usher the groom in and kind of joke and do all that taunting, you know, stuff. And then the next day they would like parade the sheets, if you will, you know, because essentially she should be a virgin. She should be innocent, you know. So that was just how it was done back in the day. It was just like this thing. I mean, can you imagine like getting married now and people like actually ushering you into your room, and the next day they all come in and grab your sheets and show it to everybody? Like, no ma'am. If I were to time warp back and that would be a thing, I would be like, you are not coming. One, get the hell away from me. Okay? One, I just came from 2022. I've been through things in 2020. You don't want to mess with me. Get the hell out. No, you're not going to look at my sheets. You need therapy. I don't know if she's veiled at this point or it's just because it's dark or like what's happening, but he has not seen her basically in all of this. And then the next day, oh, I forgot a vital point. He has a mistress. He has a mistress, Lady Amelia, And she obviously does not want Leonie around at all. She's actually a big key player in this book as well. That's also another thing I don't really like. I know it was big back in the day to have a mistress. Like, that's maybe another reason why I probably wouldn't want to honestly like time travel, because let me tell you, if I had to put up with a mistress and her living in my castle, you got some nerve right in front of my face? No, 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 no. The next day, Lady Amelia tells her like, oh, you're supposed to go back to like where you lived before. And Leonie's like, okay, great. You know, she packs up her crap and she goes back to her keep, essentially. Rolf has left. He's left to go, again, war and take over his keeps and stuff. And in this whole time, he doesn't know that Lady Amelia has done this, okay? He leaves like that early that morning, and so he has no idea. But while he's away, he can only think of her. And he's like, why? Why am I sitting here thinking about my wife who's ugly? And he just cannot get her out of his mind, and he just wants her. And he finds himself going back home earlier than he should have. And he's like, what am I doing? I haven't even seen her face. So he goes back to find out what Amelia did, and he basically is like, you gotta go. He doesn't want her as a mistress anymore. He's like, we're done. Because at this point, his whole mind has completely shifted to Leonie, which is amazing because, you know, he hasn't even seen her face. Amelia freaks out because she'd have to go back to court, like the king's court, not like, you know, Judge Judy court. And she hated it there. She absolutely hated it. She did not want to go back. So she tells the lie that she's pregnant. That good old lie. And he's just like, he's like, all right, well, I'll just send you to another place then until whatever. And she's like, no, please, I beg you, let me just stay here. And she starts the tears, and she begs him, and he's like, okay, fine, you know, but like, we're done, essentially. And she's like, okay. But she saw Lady Leonie the day of her wedding. She actually saw her unveiled and saw what she looked like. So in her mind, Lady Amelia was like, oh, he's gonna get over her real quick. So she knows, okay, I can just tell this lie about me being pregnant, and he's gonna get over her when he realizes like she's like ugly, and everything will just go back to normal. That was basically her plan. What she had obviously counted on was, one, that Rolf was already attached to her, and that, well, Leonie was dropped in gorgeous. So anyways, he finds out she does this. He basically tells her, okay, fine, whatever, but like, we're done. And he goes after Leonie. And she always used to love Cruel Keep. She used to go when she was a child. But it had like really gone down the drains, like a lot of fleas, it was smelly. The cook that was there, y'all, he was not washing his pots and pans. Can you imagine the food poisoning? Because, you know, 1176, did they have utensils? I could not be eating there, that's for sure. It would get 1 star on Yelp. But so she goes back. Oh, no, I remember now. Sorry, this is important. He's the one that goes back to get his wife. And at this point, it's been several weeks because he's been away for a couple weeks warring. And as soon as he goes back, earlier than he planned, finds out she's not there, so he does go after her. Yes, I remember now because this is when he sees her for the first time. And she's healed by then. She's used all of her healing herbs, all her stuff. And so she's back to normal, back to her beautiful self. And she's out in the garden picking her herbs. But she's dressed in her garden gear. So essentially she doesn't look like a lady, if you will, back then. She wasn't fully dressed. She was kind of like in her garb, and you just didn't really do that per se back then. If you were high ranking, you were always highly ranked. You were dressed to the nines all the time, essentially. So he comes in, he's like, where's my wife? And they're like, she's in the garden. So he goes out to the garden, but he doesn't see his wife. He sees this beautiful girl, tiny, and because she was described as, you know, small, cute, petite, like that whole thing. And he is just immediately transfixed by her, but he doesn't think it's his wife. He thinks it's just some of the servant girl out here collecting herbs. Why would a lady be doing that? You know, so he basically starts flirting with her. And honestly, like, Leonie kind of carries that throughout the whole book, as she should, because hello, not only did you just come to my house, but you came and flirted with another girl. And he basically goes up to her, he's like, hey, you want to go to a room? That was actually one big thing I will say. That was one big thing about Rolf's character that I just did not like. Joanna Lindsey typically writes her male lead roles as just very loyal, very into the woman that he's in love with. Rolf, she definitely wrote differently. She wrote him to be kind of like, it's questionable. I don't know if this was one of like her very first books. I think it might have been. I don't know when she wrote this one. But I will admit that's like one thing. I mean, I know that they can't write every man perfectly, but why not? Actually, why not? You know, I mean, I could read the same kind of books over and over with like kind of the perfect guy. And I love that. It might not be for everybody. It's kind of like Hallmark. My daughter, she gags. If she sees it on the TV, she will actually physically like start gagging. She's like, no, get that off the TV. It's just not her thing. Micah loves drama. She loves tears. She loves sadness. She loves getting her emotions involved, you know, whereas for me, I'm like, no, give me the sweet, fun, always the same. And I love that. So this part about Rolf, I was just like, ew, what's to say that you're not going to do that again? So, but anyways, neither here nor there. She does write him to be completely in love with her. And she's like, okay, sure, like, let's go to a room, because that was her part of a wife, and she knew that. You know, back then, you did not deny your husband. Like, your husband's word was that. You went from your father to your husband, and that was the end of it. That was your life then. And you were just ruled from one man to the next man, like, you know. So she's in the room with him, and he's like, oh, little flower. He calls her little flower, which I didn't like that gag. But he's, you know, starting to kiss her, and then one of her maids starts calling her and busts in the door. She's like, Leonie, Leonie. And she doesn't realize that Leonie is with Rolf, because she's there to warn her that he's there. And he's like, Leonie? He's like, you're my wife? So of course he has this like, and then he starts laughing. He just starts laughing. That was his reaction. And he's like, she's like, why are you laughing? He's like, well, you can't blame me for being happy that I just found out my wife is beautiful, is what he says. And so anyways, then they kind of get into an argument. She's like, no, you just literally came here to flirt with me even though you didn't know I was your wife. And under my nose. Because you know I'm here somewhere. You know, and he's like, I'm sorry, but like, you know, whatever he says. So basically she goes back to Cruel Keep. And, you know, at this point, he's kind of like going in and out throughout the rest of the book, basically. And then she starts having a problem with Lady Amelia. She starts falling more for him, and she's realizing that she does not like Lady Amelia being there. And then she realizes how awful Cruel Keep has been. Like, it's just dirty, fleas, infested, dogs running around, the cook is disgusting, the kitchen's disgusting, the cook can't even cook. So she changes everything when he's gone. She's like, no, we're not living like this. So she has some of her maids that come with her to Cruel, and so they just start changing everything. They start cleaning. They fired the cook. They said, go back to the stables, because he was like the stable guy. They brought in a stable guy to cook, and he's like, thank God. He was relieved, because he's like, I can't cook. But like back then, if you were employed to like do something, you did it. And so he's so thankful. He goes back to the stables. They bring in an actual good cook, and she has the whole kitchen scrubbed down, washed. It's probably gonna be like probably my favorite part in the whole book. And she gets that place turned around, and when Rolf comes back and he's like, oh my God, it smells good. On his way back, he's like, oh, let me stop at this place and eat some food, because he's like, I don't want to eat at home. It's disgusting. But when he comes back and he smells it and he sees it, and he's like, where are the dogs? They're like, oh, the dogs are outside, you know, because back then like dogs lived outside. And he was like, oh my God, like this whole place is transformed. It smells amazing. And he thinks Lady Amelia did it. And then Lady Amelia does take credit, because she's surprised. She thinks that he's like clearly knows that it was Leonie. So when he just kind of like came up to her, she's like, oh yeah, I didn't really do all that much, is what she says. You're right, you didn't do anything. You know, you lying. Don't get me started on this woman, okay? Don't. But Leonie finds out about this because her maid overhears the conversation. Her maid's name is Wilda. And Wilda overhears it, and she's like, girl, she's telling him that she like did all this. And she's like, let him. Leonie's like, let him believe it. Like, if he's that dumb to think all of a sudden, now that I'm here, it's clean and she didn't clean it before, she's like, let him believe it. And I did like Leonie for this. Leonie did not need validation or, you know, accolades. She didn't need any of it. She was so confident in herself and in her healing arts and her ability that she didn't care. What really bothered her was that just Lady Amelia was there in general. And then as their relationship progresses and she kind of like skirts around, she's like, you know, does she have to be here? And he's like, yeah, she has to be here. And then he closes the subject, and it hurts her because she doesn't realize that she's pregnant. She thinks that he doesn't want to get rid of his mistress. So that's where that whole miscommunication comes in. She doesn't realize that this pregnancy, one, she doesn't know she's pregnant. And then she doesn't realize that it obviously has happened before she came into the picture, kind of thing. So she thinks it's because he just doesn't want to get rid of his mistress, and it's hurting her. There's a lot more to this story. There's another guy that's involved in this. His name's Elaine. I think is like, he was essentially a good friend of Leonie's, and he's like been run out of his keep because Rolf took it over. And that was another reason why she didn't like Rolf. She's like, oh my God, you just ran my good family friend out of their own keep. But then she finds out that actually they were doing bad things and that they were lying and stealing. And so, but then Rolf thinks that she had a thing for him. So then he has that in his head essentially. And then he gets injured. He actually gets injured in the book, and he gets an arrow shot at him. Right-hand man, he's like, you don't come near him, because Rolf basically thinks that she had her people fire the arrow at him because he saw the guy like run his horse off towards Pershwick, her previous keep. So he thinks that this order came from her, just because of the direction that this guy had run off after he shot his arrow at him. So he basically tells his friend, he's like, don't let her near me. You know, he's mad, he's angry. And so a couple days goes by, and Rolf is getting worse. He's getting a fever, he's losing it, he's pretty much close to dying at this point. And Leonie's like, if you don't let me go in there, she's like, I'm gonna kill you. Like, I'm going to kill you if you don't let me go in there and tend to my husband, because I don't want him to die. And his friend is so confused by this, because he's like, but weren't you the one that like kind of had the order of the arrow? So he's very confused by this. He doesn't say that to her, but he's like, okay, fine. He's sensing it. He's feeling that like she couldn't have been responsible. How could she have wanted him dead when she's over here screaming about wanting to keep him alive? So he follows his gut. He lets Leonie take care of him, and she does bring him back to health essentially. Yeah, but then that miscommunication gets cleared up. But that's really the whole thing about this book. It's like one miscommunication thing after another. And that's just kind of why I'm probably not going to give it a full 5 stars. It's just not one of my favorite ways, I guess, to kind of like dive into the world. It's actually one of my least favorite things, even in movies, when it comes to like, oh man, I hate that. Just tell her, just tell him. But again, like I said, it's such a good book. I would definitely still read it. When Rolf comes back from warring again, he comes back to find that she's not there, and he doesn't immediately go after her. And in those couple of days that he doesn't go immediately to bring Leonie back, Amelia thinks, okay, he's done with her. Oh, in the process, she got herself really pregnant because she's like, crap, like he's keeping Leonie. I gotta really get pregnant here now. So she basically gets this guy who's in love with her anyways, and she becomes pregnant, but then she tries to like abort it by taking, you know, like certain herbs or something, I don't know. And she starts taking it because she's like, oh, you know, he's not going back to get Leonie. I'm good. I don't have to have this kid. But then Rolf, he's like, no, I'm going back. I'm getting my wife. And when he goes back to get her, y'all, he brings the whole cavalry, the whole freaking army. He suits up everybody, okay? And this guy, he's huge. He's got all the knights. He's got all the army. And he brings everybody to come get her back. So he pulls up to the castle, and he's like, yeah, you're coming home with me. So she tells him, she's like, okay. She's like, well, I'm not coming back if Lady Amelia is there. And he's like, well, she has to stay there. So she finds out about the baby. She's like, okay, but and then she realizes, she's like, wait, if you haven't been with her since me, she's tallying up like what Amelia told her. Amelia had told Leonie that it happened after them. And so she's like, there's no way that she got pregnant really basically by him. But when she goes back to the castle, she's still upset because she's like, he won't get rid of her, and she didn't understand still. But she comes back to her maid like, she's dying, like help her, because she had taken something. And so she goes in, and Amelia basically at that point, she tells her everything. She tells her it's not really his, this is what I've done. She comes clean, and she's like, okay, she's like, I'll help you. I'll keep you alive. Because she's like begging her, like, please help me. And she's like, you tell me the truth first. So she tells her everything. She comes clean, and she's like, okay. She's like, well, I'm not going to tell my husband this. You're going to tell him. She's like, oh my God. So she basically has Rolf. She's like, you need to go in, talk to Amelia. She leaves, and she waits, and when Rolf comes back, he finds out, one, that she was never pregnant, or that she wasn't pregnant with his kid, and she wasn't pregnant when she said she was pregnant. And then he finds out that she wasn't the one who did all the cleaning and all the stuff, because Amelia even told him that. Like, this girl really did come clean. So in the end, I really respected Amelia in a way for doing that. And so Leonie basically comes in and saves her, gives her all the medicine to, you know, bring her back. And she tells her, she's like, you know, this guy that you had this kid with, she's like, he deserves to know. And like, he really likes you. I don't really remember what happens to Amelia. I don't know if she ends up going back to court or if she like ends up with this guy. But essentially it's the end of Leonie's issue that she's had the whole time. She's like, okay, like, I'm good now, you know, now I can, you know, feel free to be vulnerable to him, essentially. And yeah, there's still so much to this book. I know that a lot of you are really going to love this. I will say that when it comes to characters, I really loved Leonie's character. She was written very, very shy, but, well, not too shy, but she was proper, sweet. She's not one of my favorite characters, I'll tell you guys that. Joanna Lindsey has written some female characters that I've loved so much. They've been so funny and just so unique. This definitely had to have been probably one of her earlier books because you can just really see a progression of her writing style as well. Because what I will say that after reading this, what I feel like lacked was actually the development of the relationship between Leonie and Rolf. It seemed like there was a moment where she wrote where they kind of like had a time where they did talking. It was when he was recovering from his wound, so they couldn't sleep together. So they were forced to talk, like, what? But there wasn't really that much character growth between the two in their relationship that was written for us to read. So I feel like I lacked that ultimate connection, but I do like Leonie's character. I love how she was written. I love just the coloring of her hair. I thought that was really cool. I love how he was written. I definitely imagine him to be just drop dead gorgeous, because she found him to be drop dead gorgeous. He was 29, I believe, and she was 19. So overall, out of 5 stars, I would probably give this, again, I am comparing this to her whole entire body of work and all of the other books that I've ever loved. So I am going to try to truly rank this without having too much favoritism over the fact that I know how good she is. So I'm going to say this is 3.5 stars out of 5. I definitely think that there was so much more potential to be written to connect Leonie and Rolf together more, and I would definitely give it a read. So I hope you guys loved the super long book review. Now I'm gonna go ahead and pull another book and show you guys what will be up the next book review. Again, I don't know if it'll follow the next Friday or what. It just depends on me finishing reading it. I changed my mind on the book that I filmed. I ended up going with this one. So this is the one we're gonna review next, Julie Garwood. It's called Wired. And it's more of a contemporary series. It's like FBI type stuff. So we're gonna take it completely opposite of historical romance. But I absolutely love Julie Garwood so much. I can't wait to review this one with you guys. So I'm probably gonna be posting this next Friday. So there's about a week if you want to maybe get this on Kindle or order it from Amazon and read it. And then you can come back and see what my thoughts are, because I've got a lot to say about this one.